In, was it Bauchi? I heard that the governor said they should move out all the boarding school students from that school and bring them to the town. I think the same thing is going to happen. They should, remove them all from boarding school at the local government areas and then bring them to this safe place so that they can be able to continue with their education. But I promise you, we are going to take a drastic measures that this thing will not repeat itself again.
The lawmakers said while schools cannot be closed down as a result of the insurgency, more caution must be taken so to reduce casualty to the barest minimum.
The governor was in Chibok, and the parents and the principal of the school confirmed to the governor that 234 girls were abducted, as opposed to the earlier news that about 189 or so were abducted, and only about 44 or so have so far returned home safely and united with their families. Right now, as he rightly pointed out, there is a massive manhunt for the girls in the Boko Haram enclaves in the Sambisa forest. But unfortunately, the zeal and the commitment on the part of our military leaves much to be desired. There should be adequate security around the schools. Once there is adequate security around the schools, I don't think we'll have any problem. Because if we are going to close all our schools, that means we are caving into the Boko Haram demand of trying to wipe out Western education.
The security crisis in the country has thrown up concerns of human rights violations by security agents. Besides human rights violations, the crisis has made many refugees in their own country. We spoke with the Chairman House Committee on Human Rights, Representative Benny La, to get her thoughts on these issues.
Attacks since the beginning of 2014 alone by members of the Boko Haram sect has affected over 40 villages, and statistics show that hundreds of thousands of persons have been displaced. Now, while the military agencies, the security agencies try to bring down these attacks and stamp out these militants, Boko Haram, there'll be a lot of infringement on human rights here. The question is, where should we draw the line? On one part, the insurgents are trampling upon human rights of people whom they attack and many whom they displace. And security agencies, on the other part, would also infringe upon their own rights. Where should we draw the line here?
Thank you very much for having me on the program. The issues you've raised are issues that are of grave concern to all Nigerians and indeed to the international community. We have had a series of unprovoked attacks and killings by terrorist organizations, particularly Boko Haram in Nigeria, which, like you've said, has led to the loss of lives of 4,000. Now, every citizen of the world under the United Nations Convention has the right to life. That is a very basic fundamental right. And the Nigerian Constitution recognizes this in Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which gives every Nigerian the right to life. And nobody shall be deprived of his life unless he is convicted by a court of law. Now, in cases where there's unlawful killings, meaning people who are not by law allowed to take away your life for any reason, come and take away the lives of these people. You see that there's a very serious threat to the lives of all Nigerians. What is happening in Boko Haram affects every single Nigerian, because it can happen to anybody, anywhere, and at any time, as we've seen and as we are seeing on a daily basis. Now, what is the duty of the state? The duty of the state is to take all necessary means to protect the lives of every single Nigerian, be it a child, be it an aged person, be it a female, a male. No life, there shall be no discrimination of a human life. And I must say that it's also the duty of the state to ensure that the aggressors are persecuted or they're brought to justice. I want to very, very categorically state that the issue of people being killed by Boko Haram is not something that is accepted by the international human rights community or the Nigerian human rights community or any community in the world. So there has to be a very serious approach. I think the balance here is what we're talking about. The security forces need to get rid of terrorists. In the process, in every country in the world where there's been terrorism, you find that this sort of situation tends to arise or exist, where security forces, in some instances, use excessive force. Now, the issue is, how do we define instances where excessive force should be used and where excessive force shouldn't be used? Excessive force should definitely be used on terrorists alone, not on innocent civilians or citizens who reside in villages around where those terrorists exist. So the security has to be very careful in carrying out its functions to ensure that in the process of doing that, civilian casualties are minimized. It may not always be possible, in as much as we would like to see that there are no civilian casualties. In many cases, it's not always possible, but to minimize as little as possible those casualties with proper education and training, it's possible to see that terrorists are fought with minimal casualties. Let's take an example. In the past, when you read the newspapers, you find every day people from Borno and Maiduguri complaining that they were just sleeping and security men came and raided their villages and killed all of them or killed so many people, as many people as possible. But with proper training and education, those events or incidences have reduced. Now security forces are careful. I can see from all my observations that they're being more careful in their approach. Even my colleagues, members, representatives from Borno have said that, yes, indeed. Since the JTF, civilian task force also joined in this fight against them, it has helped them because they're able to identify where the terrorists are and where the terrorists do not reside.
In a recent incident, you have the Human Rights Commission indicting the security agencies, that's the Office of the DSS, for instance, to have wrongfully killed about 8 persons in Apo recently, whom they said were members of the Boko Haram sect. They said these people were wrongfully killed. And in such cases, what you have to say?
What happened in Apo is very sad, but I'm sure even the SSS would have learned their lessons from there. That when you go into a situation, first of all, you need to find out who the terrorists are. But you see, sometimes when people are being provoked, when the security forces are being shot at, they fight back. And that is the rules of engagement. You fight back in a situation of war. At that point, sometimes you may not always know who is your enemy and who is not your enemy. So the important thing is for them to minimize the casualties as much as possible. Rather than just eliminating everybody around, we should try as much as possible to apply the rules of engagement, meaning who is fighting or who is shooting at you. And those that are not shooting at you or directly engaging you in conflict should not be touched.
Let's look at the issue of internally displaced persons. Now, these persons who get displaced are either out of natural disasters or man-made disasters, they also have rights. Take, for instance, the people who were displaced in the flooding of 2012. So many of them lost their means of livelihood, they lost properties, they lost their homes, they lost everything. And already there have been incessant cases of abandonment. They've complained of abandonment by the federal government. What rights should such persons be pleading? What privileges do they have to pursue?
Thank you for that question. Internally displaced persons